Welcome and good evening to the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for November 6, 2019. Item number 1, if we could call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brennan.
Here.
Councilmember Lehman.
Here.
Mayor Mars.
Here.
Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
Councilmember Contreras.
Here.
Thank you all very much. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 3, a special presentation, and Mr. Reynolds.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Oftentimes we have special presentations that come before us that are of, great things. This is actually kind of bittersweet because we have somebody that's leaving us who has been a part of this organization for a long time and has had their stamp upon the police department for literally decades. And, Craig Robson, who has been in his position now for quite some time and who has been a stalwart leader in the organization as a whole, is leaving us. Craig, we certainly wish you the best. We understand that we all move on to different things. You're moving on to retirement. Congratulations on that. You've done a tremendous job for the organization as a whole. We're going to miss you. We're going to miss your leadership. But we thought it appropriate at this point, Mr. Mayor, to recognize Mr. Robson, and if you could be so kind to read the resolution in support of his retirement and all of his great work at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Yes, Craig Robson has played an important role in our community and the department for our city for a long time, and we are forever grateful as a community. You will be missed. And I do know that you have very big shoes that need to be filled.
And not just physically.
But with that, we are going to offer a resolution. And before we read it, we'd offer a motion. Councilor Lehman.
Offer resolution R219-119, a resolution of appreciation to Captain Craig Robson.
Second it.
I have a motion and a second. Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, Mr. Reynolds, the last whereas, did we make that correction?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Before we vote, we will read the resolution into the public record, and Councilor Contreras is offered.
Resolution number R2019-119, a resolution of appreciation to Captain Craig Robson. Whereas Craig Robson began his law enforcement career with the Shakopee Police Department, and whereas Craig Robson was hired as a patrol officer with the Shakopee Police Department and was subsequently appointed patrol sergeant in 1998 and into his current position as captain in 2006. And whereas Craig's wife, Michelle, his 3 children, Adam, Aaron, and Lindsay, have supported Craig during his tenure at the Shakopee Police Department. And whereas during his tenure at the Shakopee Police Department, Craig has held many assignments: field training officer, member of the SWAT team, where he was instrumental in implementing a county-wide SWAT team, defensive tactic instructor, firearms instructor, and first taser instructor in Scott County. And whereas Craig has received numerous accolades, letters of appreciation, and a Meritorious Service Award for his work on Master Planning Task Force, and a Distinguished Service Award when a prisoner held a jail staff hostage at the Scott County Jail. Craig is certified in emergency management planning and is a graduate of the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia. And whereas throughout Craig, 28 years of dedication, service to the residents and the city of Shakopee, he has embodied and lived the Shakopee Police Department's mission statement to provide services with integrity and professionalism, to protect citizens throughout enforcement of law, and to work in partnership with our community to enhance the quality of life in the city of Shakopee. And whereas Craig has been instrumental in in coordinating many of the department's most complex and high-profile investigation for more than 2 decades. Whereas, after providing 28 years of service, Captain Robson will retire from his position of captain on November 30th, 2019. Now, therefore, to be resolved that the City Council of the City of Shakopee hereby accept with regret the resignation of Captain Craig Robson from the Shakopee Police Department effective November 30th, 2019. And be it further resolved that the Mayor and the City Council of the City of Shakopee, Minnesota hereby extend their sincere appreciation and gratitude for the dedicated service of Captain Craig Robson to the City of Shakopee and extends to him their best wishes of happiness and a long, happy retirement. Adopted in regular session of the City Council of the City of Shakopee held the 6th day of November, 2019.
Councilor Contreras, thank you very much, and we have a motion, we have a second. The resolution's been read into the public record. Before we vote, any other comments here from Councilmember Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Robson, 2002, we worked together on the emergency management tabletop exercise. We also worked together on the police master planning task force, and we worked together on the body camera policy. I gotta say, there's nobody that I would rather work with on difficult topics. You're a very fair man. You're gonna be very missed by this community. And I guess as a representative of the citizens of Shakopee, I'd like to say that on behalf of a grateful city, we appreciate all you've done for this community. Thank you.
Councilor
I
Whiting?
can't say much more than that, but congratulations on your retirement. You've earned it. Thank you for all your work in the community.
Councilor Brennan?
Thank you for everything you've done. Obviously, all the words that have been spoken today really exemplify who you are as a person. So I appreciate the work you've done in Shakopee.
I'm usually the last one, and everyone always says, has the best words, but again, just thank you for your service to our community and to your family. You're getting them back because he sacrificed many days to, serve the community. So watch out, he's gonna be home now.
Greg, I've known you for a long time. You've seen it all in our community in the last 20 years. You've seen it grow up. You played an important role on it. I believe that you're leaving a city and a department in a much better position than when you found it. And I am thankful. I hope that our community is thankful for your service. I've also been involved in many of these resolutions, and I just want for the record to know that you had 8 whereases. That's a little higher than a normal. plus 2, let it be resolved. A pretty high honor, and thank you very much for your service. Councilor Lehman?
Mr. Robson, over the years, you've noticed that whenever we vote on a resolution like this, if it's a stellar employee leaving us, I vote no. I'm going to be consistent. Please don't take it personal.
So with that, a motion, a second, and some comments. Further discussion, if there isn't any, we all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 4-1, and maybe we'll have a picture.
Good.
Congratulations, Craig.
right, moving ahead. Item number 4, approval of agenda. Mr. Reynolds, are there any changes, corrections?
We have a couple, Mr. Mayor, members of council. First of all, you'll see the updated information for item 7C in front of you on the dais. We will be pulling 5A5 from the consent agenda, which is the request from Babe's Place, and we will be removing from the agenda in total 5B1, which is the agreement with Southwest Christian High School in regards to ice rental. That will be coming back to you in a future date. And that's all from staff.
5D1 off,
Off totally, and 5A5 off consent.
and do we have a, okay?
5B1.
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 Is delete.
Correct.
Yes, delete.
Yeah.
5A5 is where you want to move that.
5A5 will then bounce down to items pulled off consent.
All right, why don't we put it right after 7 or 7A1 or,
It'll be business removed from consent and item
It'd
7.
be 7, yes. It'd be on number 7.
okay. So a couple modifications. Counselor Lehman?
I'd like to remove 5A4
Oh,
from consent.
okay, but we're on the agenda aspect.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, no further changes to the modified agenda. Counselor Whiting?
Make a motion to approve the modified agenda.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Item number 5, consent business. Counselor Lehman.
5A4.
As previously noted, 5A5 would be off consent to be moved just below item number 7. And others? Others? Counselor Lehman?
I'll move the consent agenda as modified.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the modified consent agenda. Before we vote on the modified consent agenda, we would have the consent agenda read into the public record. Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. These are the consent agenda items from November 4th of 2019. 5A1 approves the minutes from the October 15, 2019 meeting. 5A2 approves a settlement agreement and release of claims with CenturyLink in the amount of $18,236.44 for underpaid franchise fees. 5A3 approves the interview committee recommendation for appointing William Scarr to fill the remaining term of the Park and Recreation Advisory Board vacancy, which expires on February 28th of 2022. 5B2 declares 2 gaming tables held by the Parks and Recreation Department as surplus property and authorizes their proper sale or disposal. 5C1 declares 6 forfeited vehicles held by the Police Department as surplus property and also authorizes their proper sale or disposal. 5D1 approves the pass-through funding agreements with Lower Minnesota River Watershed District for grant funding for the Prior Lake Outlet Channel Realignment Wetland Restoration Project and for the targeted best management practices for downtown Shakopee. 5D2 approves the 2019-2020 sidewalk and trail snow removal routes. And finally, 5D3 authorizes the execution of a professional service agreement with SRF Consulting Group Incorporated for corridor study services for the Marystown Road / Adams Street Corridor Improvement Project, which is CIF TAC 2BD, which I believe is to be determined, TAC 007.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. I have a motion on the table. I have a second. The modified consent agenda has been read into the public record. There would be no further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 6. Now I'd like to call on any resident that would like to come forward and speak on an item not on the agenda. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and welcome on an item not on the agenda. Seeing none, we would move ahead to item number 7, business removed from consent agenda. 5A4, adoption of the Metro Cities 2020 draft legislative priorities. Counselor Lehman.
Mr. Mayor, as normal, I take this off every year, pretty much for the same reason. Many policies, positions in here that I do not agree with. A couple examples, loosening up the use of government eminent domain on private property. Obviously, I think it should be tightened up, so it's harder for government to take people's private property. Disarming law-abiding citizens doesn't stop criminals. Disagree with that aspect of this. I disagree with street improvement districts. I've tried explaining that to a couple of our state and senator members, where if you're currently paying a assessment on a road improvement and adopt this policy, you could be paying twice, one for a road that currently just got fixed and one for a road that will get fixed 20 or 30 years later that you might not be here for. So, too much in this document that I disagree with, and I plan on voting against it.
All right. Counselor Lehman, every year, as long as I've known you, you voted against these policies. Have you ever tried to create a positive impact by getting on one of their policy boards?
Well, I meet with the state, Senate, and House members as a citizen, obviously not as a representative of this body. So they're open to taking input from multiple positions. I'm not able to serve during the day that they meet. I work for a living, so it's for me to shut down my small business to run up to the cities for a day. Not practical.
All right. Counselor Whiting?
Make
comment?
motion to approve and adopt the Metro Cities 2020 draft legislative policies.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Contreras. This every year, I believe the body of these policies are, in general, very good. There's a couple that I disagree with too, but it's the body of the work. Some of these affect us, some don't. I think Metro Cities does a good job on behalf of the cities that they represent. I know we have a couple board members that sit on committees here, so we're thankful for Councilor Brennan and Bill Reynolds being on that and playing a role to help improve these policies. But that's my position on it. And any other comments? Discussion? There's a motion and a second on the table. Discussion? Discussion? Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you very much. Next item is the item that was moved off of consent and onto the regular agenda. I call it 7A1, is a request to close an alley on Home Street to Babes Place side door. And Lori, are you presenting?
Well, Mary Isaacson from Babes has requested to have the alley alongside of her business from Home Street to her side door closed on Fridays from 5:30 to 7 or 8, 7:30. And she has got an event that she holds every Friday night, and it has been drawing large crowds as the pot of money has grown. And her capacity in her building currently is 350, and the numbers have exceeded that. Her request has been for this to happen only when the numbers exceed the capacity of her building. And so that's about it.
Questions of staff? This request is an open-ended request?
Yes, this is, my understanding is it is going, she still has 7 weeks of cards left. How many? 13 cards left, okay. So that could possibly be 13 weeks.
Okay,
Or it could, yeah, it could go this Friday, but the potential is 13 more weeks. And so
okay,
it is kind of an open-ended. It would only, if she repeats this event at her business location, generally at the beginning, it's very small. But I think that as we are seeing, people are aware of the numbers and they're aware of the event, and it has grown exponentially. I think that this is going to continue to be large groups, even if the event starts over. So those things are needing to be considered. I know that there's concerns from the police department about lighting in the area for anybody that's driving past and all those numbers, and the alley is kind of dark. So if they accidentally would, obviously with barricades, you would see the barricade, but they're concerned about the safety of people. So that was noted in the memo.
okay. Other questions of staff? If not, would Mary like to come forward and make a comment? Please state your name and address for the record, and welcome.
Hi, I'm Mary Isaacson. I'm 703 Lewis Street. I'm the owner of Babe's Place in Shakopee. Council members and mayor. Been here before. Yes, it has grown exponentially. I was asked, about lighting. It is my understanding, for one thing, and I'm not sure, it's on my understanding that next year we are slated to maybe do the alley. And right now there's one street light in there, and it's towards the back. That light, it goes on when it wants and it goes off when it wants. I'm assuming they at the city of Shakopee, the Public Works came and looked at it, and I'm thinking that they can't fix it. I'm just assuming, because when they came and looked at it, it still does the same thing. I'm thinking when they redo the city of that they were going to put in better lighting. They'll go down the alley. Right now, the lights are on in the front on Home Street, and the alley is lit up for where I want to be. I think there's plenty of light there. It's only when it gets later then some of the lights go off in the city also. And that's when it gets dark down there. But we would have the road block on Home Street that no one would go in there.
Any other comment you want to make about your application?
It's an incredible event for the city, for the business owners downtown, for the bars, for the restaurants, for the people walking around downtown. We had 700 people last week. That's 700 people that are coming out of their homes, coming downtown, participating in the raffle, leaving, and going to all the other businesses. I haven't had one issue with anything. They're happy when they come in and they're happy when they leave, because there's no winner.
A winner would make.
They're just happy people. So I honestly can say I've not had one issue whatsoever with anything happening down there. And it's a great, that's all I ever hear is it's a great thing for the community.
Congratulations on your success.
Yeah, it was,
Any comment on your what I consider your highly unusual open-ended request?
I can have 350 people. I mean, I would love to have a parking lot. I can't.
Bigger bar.
I don't need that. I can still keep going up, I would love to have a parking lot. I would love to have a big area of parking. I think that would just be the answer to everything, I'm not going to be able to get that. I'm not like all the other places.
Well, people are coming to your establishment for the fine establishment that you have. They're also coming for your event. I haven't heard parking's been a problem on that, but The,
And I have not had one, because people know when they're coming. It's a special thing.
yeah,
They know they're parking up on 4th Street. They know they're walking down. So I've not had one. I haven't even heard any issues when they closed what parking we had in, with the construction. And they're just coming down there. Like I said, they're happy.
it's a destination, and then people will walk for events
Yes.
or the location like Babe, so.
Yes, and it's just, it has been, it's been a remarkable, I didn't envision this. It's all word of mouth. I did not envision 700 people. And maybe we'll have a break this weekend because of hunting, but I don't think so.
Questions of the applicant? If not, or Counselor Whiting?
Staff had talked about the lighting. Would that be something you would be willing to install?
And you asked me that. I don't know how I can do that. My issue is, when I redid the building, I was told then that the alley was going to get done. And so I didn't even repair my steps along the side. I put a Band-Aid on it, knowing it was going to get done. And then the year came, and then I was said, nope, it's not going to get done this year. It's going to get done next year. And I'm like, well, my Band-Aid broke. And so my thing is, I don't know what your plan is for when you redo the alley, and how much lighting are you going to provide, which I would hope that it's ample, just because the parking lot's on the end, and you want people to park over there. Well, they have to have lighting through that alley to get there, the one on Fuller Street.
Counselor Whiting, follow up?
Mr. Reynolds or Mr. Lillehog, can you follow up a little bit on what's planned for the alley reconstruction in that area?
Yeah, Mayor and council members, we do have it in the capital improvement plan for next year. We haven't performed any evaluation on it yet. I would say that the existing alley lighting down there for the different blocks of alleys, they're not consistent, but we will certainly include that as part of our feasibility study and project to ensure that we do have consistent and adequate lighting down there. For this season and these events that are occurring right now, there's not much we can do with lighting on our end in the short amount of time on the public end of it, but we would evaluate it with our project in the future.
Other comments? Question, I have one last question. So, if this proposal or this application were to be approved, and I was in your alley section outside with my ticket, how am I ever gonna hear Mary's voice call my winning ticket amongst all those people?
That you don't have to worry about, which I've told everyone when they're in there. I say, if you have to be outside, and I tell them, you have to go outside.
Yeah,
Dress appropriate. Somebody's got to go outside. If I don't hear, which has happened before, if someone doesn't say they have the ticket, I will find you. I will go outside. I will
yeah,
use the megaphone. I will call a number out. What we do also have is, when you come in and get your ticket, you put your name on the back of it.
okay.
So I know, in this instance, Jason was outside, and so I knew I'm looking for Jason.
Right.
And I'm like, Jason's outside. So they went and got Jason. But yes, that we will find you. It doesn't just go away. It's, no, we're going to find you.
Counselor?
A couple of comments, I guess, if you're ready
Well,
for those.
let's just, all right. Any other questions of the applicant? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was doing diligence for the council, so I attended last Friday's event, and I want to make sure everybody knows that Mary did talk about making sure that people had to take one for the team, I think you said, and be outside. But she has come down here and said that she's over her capacity of, I think it was 350 people. So, at a public safety kind of thought, as our duty is here, I think we have to be concerned that, we keeping your capacity where it needs to be safe. But having said that, I think you did a great job communicating that people had to go outside and that you would find them, just what you said, that you would track them down and everybody would be good. Some of the thoughts on your proposal, though, I think we'd have to do wristbands if this gets voted through. We'd have to do wristbands and checking IDs. The lighting thing, I think, is a concern, and we'd have to do either temporary lighting until the alley is reconstructed. The fact that your alley has multiple access points, they're private, but there's other ways to get in there in an emergency situation. And I know your patrons would get out of the way if somebody had to get through there, but because that alley has multiple access points and the fact that you don't have parking, I think there's a way we could work with staff with the lighting. I think you can give at least a week's notice if you plan on going the event longer. I don't think the barricade issue is going to create too much of a concern for staff. So in my thought, I guess with discussion here, I would like to take a look at letting this go through as a trial period, working with the police department and possibly even paying some overtime for police if needed.
Other comments? Councilor Brennan?
I have concerns on how you're going to manage it, Mary, and I have concerns about the indefinite statement that was included in this, and because indefinite is really a long time, and it could be 20 years from now, and we still have this out here. So I really have great concerns about that. I would prefer to see it as an event that comes forward to us every time, and then we look at it and decide if we're going to approve it or not. But I don't feel comfortable approving this as it is.
Councilor Lehman?
Last time I stood outside in a cold winter drinking was probably in my teens, and I think the statute of limitations is up on that. Thank God.
This is being recorded.
It's all right. I have a couple of problems with this, actually, and I'm going to walk through what some of these concerns are. First, let's recognize this as a public alley. It's not there just for the businesses on that block. It's for the whole community, and the whole community actually pays for the improvements to these alleys and the upkeep. This alley serves multiple businesses on this block. Yes, there's multiple accesses, but in order to utilize them accesses, you are using somebody else's personal property without permission, which is unacceptable. I'd like to see us be consistent when we grant these. In many of these in the past, and I'm going to use the hot rod car days or whatever it is, there's a schedule in advance. We know the times, the dates, so everybody has adequate time to plan accordingly. And it's only for a set period. It's not unending indefinitely. So I have multiple concerns with this. I'm glad that you're having success. You know, I'm sure there's ways that you can do these drawings instead of having all your business on 1 or 2 days, that you'd like to see that every day. You could have smaller events on certain weekdays, drawing a crowd in for something, and then have a bigger day over here and draw a bigger crowd for that. So there's a lot of different things that could be done that would mitigate a lot of these concerns. I'm just not comfortable with saying, here's a public piece of property, use at your discretion for your benefit.
Councilor Contreras?
Yes, Mary, well, first of all, congratulations on all the success you're having. But again, I'm with the counselors in their idea that there are multiple concerns. And my number one concern is that it's indefinite. It can continue to go on for, like you said, you still have 13 weeks left. And like Councilor Lehman said, it's a public alley. Other, businesses are there. There might not be in service at that time, but still, there's people who might not even know of the event that's going on and might not even be from around and trying to get through, and I can just see different things happening. And unfortunately, I, at this moment, don't feel comfortable with deciding that, we could, go on with this. It's just, it's a public heli, I'm sorry. And again, the lighting, it is an issue. Things can happen and, there needs to be a light. And if, we can work something out with that, maybe even like Counselor Whiting said, maybe do it for a certain time, but not it for an indefinite, just approve it for an indefinite time.
My thoughts on this, congratulations on your success. I think for our city, I think we have allowed event closings of certain portions of a street and that, but it's a one-time situation. And to have an open-ended, I can't see that. I know that people come to your bar. I've driven by a couple times on Friday. Very popular. I have some concerns about that alley and then the barricading of it, and then how do you disperse the people? As some people may come just for the drawing, right? They come and have a beer or two, get their ticket, and then after that, they might leave your establishment. I know I've been to meat raffles, and you go to the meat raffle, and then when that's over, you leave at times. But the open-endedness of it is concerning too. I would be willing to offer that we try this one time or two times at the most, and then just see what comes of it. But no other permit has come before us where it's open-ended. More comment or direction? Councilor Whiting?
One comment, Mary, I think that there's a point where we can get something done here. I think we need to give and take, and I think if you work with staff, they can find something that can work for a few of these events anyway, and at least we can try and get together on it. I think there's somewhere in the middle we can meet.
Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, if there is an effort to try to work something that's more acceptable, I just want to be clear what I'm looking for. I'm looking for specific dates, specific times, and I'm really not too concerned about the light because I think you raise a valid point. Why make a huge investment on a light when it might be in the wrong place? It might not fit what the future construction designs are for the alley. It might have to be something temporary or whatever, so I wouldn't, the lighting is not my top thing. It's the dates, times, to where the general public knows, the other businesses know in advance, so people can plan accordingly around it.
Okay. Would we want to make a motion one way or another? City attorney weighs
Well,
in.
Mr. Mayor, I think if there's some thought it might come back to you, maybe just tabling it would be the best option, and staff can come back with you if they think they've got something worked out.
Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to table this, directing staff to notate our comments if this is to be worked on by the applicant more.
Okay, and some of the key components that staff would be looking at would be better start time.
Dates, times, length of, are you asking for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like this?
I think lighting would need to be addressed.
Lighting, I was looking at the time, 5:30 to 8. I know the drawing's at 7. Do we have to, the alley is of importance to the community. Does it need to be blocked off for that entire time? Can it be a shorter 6 to 8? I also, the dates, as much as we like this success, it's like the Powerball. The money raises to 200 million and everybody jumps in. If someone wins that ticket next Friday, we're not going to have this problem again for a while, right? As you said the last time you were in front of us, you said it builds up, and now we're at that Powerball point, but I think that if someone won the ticket, then, you know, it's gonna take a while to build it back up, and we could have an opportunity to look at this, but I would like to have, you know, specific dates and only a couple here if that were to go forward, because I don't want to get into a situation where it's a carte blanche or lasting, because I think we could be in a situation where that would be embedded in this for a while.
How about, what do we do with lighting?
The lighting, I've driven through that alley 5 times, and Mary's right. Her front lights kind of almost bend around the corner just a touch. Probably the darkest point is obviously, like any alley, right on her steps going into that back door. There is lighting to the west and pretty good illumination there. It's probably 20, 30 feet of what appears to be really dark, but you know, could it function in this for now? It'd be great if she would install a security light over that, because I think she's using the lighting on the front, and if there's a light pole there on the corner on Holmes, and then there's more of a general parking light for the open area that comes in, so it's infill, right, coming from both sides, so, but a nice security light over her door would maybe do it. Councilor Lehman?
That's reasonable, I think. I don't want to, I just want to be clear that I don't think it's her obligation to be putting in a telephone pole and alley lighting and these types of
Security
improvements.
light.
I agree with you.
Mr. Reynolds has got his hand.
Councilor Brennan?
I would also like to see how an exit plan if there was an emergency. I don't want people congregating around the door so that people can't exit out of the building or people can't exit out of the area. So I'd like to know how that would work out.
Very good. Okay. Mr. Reynolds?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, you know, most of staff's concerns do fluctuate around the safety considerations here. The lighting was something that specifically came from the police department. They went and looked at the area. I do think that that's a significant issue. Lighting is good until it's not and something happens, and then
Yeah.
so I think lighting is a significant concern. The police department has pointed that out,
Yep.
and that is something that staff would request that we significantly look at. And we're not looking at putting a pole in there. We just need significant lighting so people understand that something is different in the alley. And you know, whatever that would entail is fine from a staff's perspective, but again, it is a safety issue.
Does staff have enough direction?
Yeah, I think we can work through it. We can figure it out. Yeah.
Shorten the time, shorten the dates,
Yep.
lighting, safety, and we might have something we can all work with. That sound good? Motion on the table in a second. Further discussion? No?
What was the second? Who was the second?
I'll second.
Okay, I apologize. We have a second. We've had some discussion to have it go back to staff with clear direction. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right. Let's move ahead then to a couple public hearings. We have 8A, the 2019 currency exchange license, and would Councilor Whiting?
Make a motion to open a public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion in 2 seconds. Further discussion? Discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Public hearing is now open, and Lori?
It's me again. So Mayor and Council, this is a yearly renewal license that the state actually provides to our pawn shops that do cash checking, the cashing checks, excuse me. And so XL Pawn has gone through the process. They always have a yearly background check. There's a very large insurance that they have to be carrying for this license. And we generally have to open it up for a public hearing so that if any citizen or anyone in the community has issue with the pawn shop, that they can come and speak to that. Otherwise, we need to, the state requires us to approve it or deny it before they will approve the license. So it's basically, I know that the police department hasn't had any issues. We haven't had any complaints from them. So it's now open to the community to speak to this if there's anybody here.
Questions of staff? Questions of staff? Seeing none. Would the applicant and/or their representative like to come forward and make comment on this? If the applicant or their representative does not want to come forward, that's fine. This is a public hearing. Would anybody else like to come forward and make comment on this application? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. This is a public hearing, if anybody would like to come forward. Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, seeing no public input, I will make a motion to close the public hearing.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Whiting. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Counselor Lehman.
Offer resolution R219-113, a resolution approving the application XL Pawn Inc., DBA XL Pawn and Jewelry, 450 West First Avenue, currency exchange license.
Second?
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Brennan. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations. Moving ahead then to another public hearing, 8B Wood Duck Trail reconstruction and
Motion to, motion,
Counselor Contreras.
thank you. Motion to open public hearing.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Whiting. Open the public hearing. Further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Public hearing is now open and staff will present. Steve, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight, we are asking you to hold a public hearing on the Wood Duck Trail project pertaining to special assessments with the recommendation to adopt the assessment accordingly. A recap, whoops, I skipped the page, apologies. So the process in public hearing for the city roadway improvement projects, we are conducting it in accordance with state statute 429 process. The Wood Duck Trail project location is bounded by Hohenstein on the west and Maple Trail on the east, and it includes all properties in between abutting Wood Duck Trail. That is a total of 7 properties. A recap on the project. This project began in the spring when the roadway failed with the spring thaw. And thereafter, we advanced the project. A feasibility report and improvement public hearing were held in June and July of this year. We prepared plans and we awarded the project to Northwest Asphalt Incorporated, who promptly started the project in August. The project was actually substantially completed in pretty short order by the beginning of October. And tonight we are asking you to finalize the project at this point by conducting a special assessments public hearing, then adopting the assessments for certification. As you are well aware, this was an emergency type of project. Again, it was identified this spring, and we identified it, and then we advanced the project. It was part of a future capital improvement project. So we advanced it for immediate reconstruction before the snow flied this winter. And well, it snowed this morning, but we indeed completed the project, as you can see from the after reconstruction photo that was taken mid-October. And that's the one on the right. So the project came slightly under budget with the total project cost of approximately $370,000. The funding for the project included $277,000 out of the Capital Improvement Fund, $27,000 out of the storm drainage fund, and then with the proposed $66,000 of special assessments. Project costs that are assessed only pertain to the roadway costs. The storm sewer improvements that we made with the drain tile in the roadway, those costs will actually be fully funded out of the storm drainage fund and not assessed. So the map, again, depicts those properties to be assessed. It includes those 7 properties that directly abut Wood Duck Trail. Per the city policy, I also wanted to make note that corner lots are assessed at a half rate, understanding that they would also be assessed at a half rate for the other frontage that they abut with their property. And there are 3 corner properties on this project. So generally, the city policy is to assess 30% of the roadway improvement costs. Again, for this project, all 7 properties, they are large, single-family residential lots. They are zoned rural residential. And based on city policy, the computed assessment rate would actually be computed with the final project costs at $14,706 per lot. As we discussed in the feasibility stages, et cetera, throughout this project, we also have guidance in the city policy to ensure that the proposed assessment amount exceeds the special benefit that the property receives. So we performed a special benefit appraisal analysis up front. As part of that analysis, it resulted with a recommended cap on the assessment amount of $12,000 per lot. So what does that mean to the properties and the residents that would have to pay this amount? Based on the 10-year payback that we would have for these type of projects in a set 5.5 interest rate, annual payments on the $12,000 assessment would vary between $1,970 and $1,266. The monthly amounts computed, they'd be about $165 a month to start with, and then ending at $106 per month.
If I were to enter into the 10-year agreement with interest at any point, I could pay that off without any penalty and save the prorated interest, right?
Correct. So a couple of payment options that we have to elaborate on that. Property owners may pay the assessment in full or a partial amount upfront by December 6th with no interest. The other option we have generally is they would pay in installments on their property taxes. Again, once this body certifies it to the county property tax roll, and that would start in 2020 if they do not pay in full, which will include interest from the date certified. And then beyond that, property owners may also elect to pay off the remaining special assessment at any time over the 10-year assessment period. So pretty simple and straightforward. But a special note to property owners here tonight that if they desire to appeal the assessment, that they should preserve their right to appeal by filing a written objection tonight to the assessment prior to the close of this public hearing. And with that, I do recommend approving Resolution R2019-114, which adopts the assessments for the Wood Duck Trail Reconstruction Project, Capital Improvement Fund Project 19-008. I would also like to mention that approval of the assessment rolls requires a four-fifths vote. And with that, I thank you and welcome any questions.
Steve, thank you very much. Counselor Lehman?
Couple of questions, Mayor. This road failing, there were some erosion issues and some sub-base issues. Can you tell us what we did concerning that?
Yes, Mayor and council members. So originally the roadway was built basically on the in-situ soils, and they capped it off with 6 inches of class 5 and then a 3.5-inch bituminous pavement section, to my memory. But what we did was we came and excavated the roadway basically down 3 feet we put a fabric on the bottom of that in situ soil that we excavated to, which I have you, they could barely drive a skid steer on without rutting it up. So it was very wet, it was very soft. I'm not sure how the heck they built that road initially. They must have had really, really dry conditions, but those soils were really wet. So once they excavated down, we put fabric down, and then we put 2 foot of sand. We put 6 inches of class 5 and then 4 inches of bituminous. In that bottom of the sand section, we also put drain tile. So we didn't create a bathtub and retain that water. We put drain tile in there, and it drains to the low point of the road and empties out into the culvert in one location. So it's a pretty good solid road. It's really how it had to be built. Otherwise, we end up with premature failure like we had in a situation like this.
Follow-up?
Thanks, Mayor. The bituminous, you did 4 inches, and it was 3.5, so it's thicker now than it was originally. And was that 2 layers?
Yeah, original construction back in the day, we generally the standard was 3.5 inches. Now we like to put 2-inch lifts in, so it's an even 4 inches.
And would you happen to know, since it's your area of expertise, if the blacktop now is better than it was then?
Mayor and council members, I sure would like to think so. Sometimes it depends on mix designs and the time of year, but generally there have been good improvements in pavement design, better controls when it's paved, et cetera, et cetera. So I like to think that we are putting a better product in than 20 years ago. We have things in place to try to manage that. So I want to say yes, but it doesn't always happen.
Sure, thank you.
Other questions? I just want to, so we did a special benefit analysis on these properties in regard to this project, and we capped the assessment because the thinking back then was that the assessment would not, the benefit wouldn't match the assessment. Is that correct?
Correct, Mayor. So per the state statute 429 guidance, it is good. It's required that the value that this project adds to those properties is more than what we assess. It's not always easy to figure out what that number is, so we do this benefit analysis to ensure that we don't assess too high and to make sure that we come
And
under
the
that.
landowners are getting a benefit.
Correct.
Right, okay. Other questions of staff? Questions of staff? If not, thank you. This is a public hearing. If anybody would like to come and make comment in regard to this assessment on Wood Duck Trail, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Make comment on this reconstruction project. Seeing none? Wait, before we close this public hearing, I apologize. I want to make sure that the affected residents, if you want to appeal this assessment, you would need to hand in your written letter at this time before we close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Lehman to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Councilor Brennan?
I make a motion to adopt resolution number R 2019-114, adopting assessments for the Wood Duck Trail Reconstruction Project, CIF-19-008.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Contreras. Further discussion? Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. Moving ahead then to 8C, 2019 Street and Utility Reconstruction. Councilor Lehman.
Make a motion to open a public hearing for the 2019 Street and Utility Reconstruction Project CIF 19-003.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. Further discussion? Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Public hearing is now open, and before we begin, I think there was an updated, final revised assessment roll. It was marked 7C. It is pertaining to agenda item 8C, and that's on the table. Ryan, thanks for being here.
Correct, and I can speak to that. There were two minor revisions on the assessment roll. Property addresses, PIDs, the amounts were all correct, that two ownerships had changed hands, and so the proper notices for the public hearing we verified, mailed to those new property owners. However, the assessment roll had shown the name for those two former property owners. So that revision is in front of you for the public record. This is the public hearing for the 2019 Street and Utility Reconstruction Project, and this is the special assessment public hearing here on November 6th. This project, via State Statute 429, we undertook a public city council initiated project that was identified in the 2019 CIP plan. We reconstructed Scott Street from 4th Avenue to 6th Avenue, a block of 7th Avenue from Somerville Street to Spencer Street, and the cul-de-sac of Minnesota Street from 4th Avenue to its south end. There were approximately 40 homes on this project this year. Some timeline for you. We brought the feasibility report to you back in January of 2019. The initial improvement public hearing was held in February 2019. In April, we brought forward into council action item to award the contract to Ryan Contracting Company. They subsequently got in and completed this project in kind of a record time for us this year. We did hold off to put the final wear course on until later this summer to allow for any kind of settlement, punch list fixes, things like that. So significant completion was October 15th. We brought that before. And now here we are with the public hearing and adopt resolutions. A little image that should sell itself on the before and after of Scott Street. This would be adjacent to the courthouse, larger parking lot. So project costs for you here. So the estimated total construction cost based on the contract award date was $1,283,918. The actual final cost came in just under that at $1,245,555.28. We have identified those funding sources for you. We are asking for $123,209.34 in assessments. Approximately $70,000 will be attributed to the sanitary sewer fund, almost $210,000 to the storm sewer fund. $179,000 of this bill will go to Shakopee Public Utilities for the water main improvements, and the capital improvement fund would fund the rest of $660, just about $3,000 for that total funding of $1.245 million. As we talked, there would be special assessments with this project. This is a map of the 3 project areas. We do have 3 different types of properties on this project. We do have some single-family residential. We have some multifamily residential and some institutional uses, particularly Scott County's government parking lots. We do, as discussed in the last public hearing, 30% based on the city's assessment policy is proposed to be assessed, and that is of the roadway construction costs. This project was a little different in that we had a lot of long lots adjacent to the project area, but we wanted to treat them the same as everybody else and kind of give them that one unit, that 60-foot standard city lot block. So we took all the project costs and determined a street cost per foot, and then gave everybody basically a 60-foot equivalent, and that's what you'll see in the assessments. Per the assessment policy, the multifamily residential lots are assessed at a rate of 1/2 of a single-family multi-unit rate, and then the institutional uses, as consistent with past years and the assessment policy, are based on a front footage basis. So what does that look like? The proposed assessment rate for a single-family residential lot is proposed to be $4,299 per lot. Typical multifamily then would be $2,149.50. And that typical institutional lot was $71.65 per foot. Payback over 10 years, interest rate at 5.5%. This shows you an amortization schedule for those payments. So this is set up for an initial for those single-family residential lots at $4,299. You can see over the life of the loan, it would accumulate approximately $1,300 in interest. Payments averaging $700 in that first year, down to $453 in that last year of payments. Residents can, as payment options go, can pay full or any partial amount with no interest within 30 days of the closing of the public hearing tonight, so December 6th. Notices will be mailed after your approval. The assessments would then be certified to Scott County property taxes, and they'd be paid back at a portion at over a 10-year period, subject to that 5.5% interest rate from the date the assessments are adopted. And residents can choose to pay off any portion or all of that at any time during that 10-year period to avoid additional interest. With that, I would note this is a council-initiated project requiring a 4/5 vote for approval. And I'd also like to offer that property owners wishing to preserve their right to appeal this assessment must file a written objection prior to the closing of the public hearing tonight. And with that, I'd offer you our recommendation to adopt Resolution R 2019-112, resolution adopting the assessments for the 2019 Street and Utility Reconstruction Project, CIF 19-003.
Ryan, thank you very much. Questions of staff, Counselor Lehman?
The question on the table, there's two properties that had the incorrect property owner name. It says they were notified, the correct owner was notified. When was that notification made?
I don't have the exact date in front of me. I believe 429 were required to notify residents a minimum of 14 days before the public hearing. I would say that that probably went out about a month ago.
Okay.
Other questions? I've driven on I think all the three pieces there. Roadways look good. Always new streets look nice, don't they?
Sure do.
Yeah, sometimes you forget what it used to look like, right? Other comments to staff? Questions of staff? Seeing none, Ryan, thank you very much. This is a public hearing. For those that would like to discuss this reconstruction project and assessment, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Bob Cole, 340 Fifth Avenue West. The road is great. It was long overdue. My only question is, my proposed amount on the first page is fine. Turn the page over, it says the amount is subject to change. So I'm not going to get a surprise after this, right?
We would certify this tonight at the actual cost that's on there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward and make comment on this? Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, I think it's fair to point out that when the number could change, it's because at the beginning of the project, you do a feasibility estimate. And if you notice, some of them changed. The construction cost maybe went up or down just a little bit. Water cost might have went up and down a little bit. Overall project cost went down. But sometimes they actually do go up a little bit. You hit something that you don't know. And so that's why that's in there. But the numbers that we have tonight are the firm numbers.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Melinda Lalick, 408 Minnesota Street.
And then speak into the mic.
Sorry.
Thank you. Welcome.
The 2,000, is that per year or is that over the 10-year span?
Total amount.
Over the total amount.
It's the total amount,
It's
not including interest.
Ryan?
that?
Thank you.
So the proposed amount per lot is the total assessed amount that is split up and paid back over the 10 years. So if you're due the $2,000, it'd be roughly just under $200 a year for 10 years. Yep,
And where,
go ahead.
Yes, thank you.
and where was it that there was going to be an interest charged?
So when you get assessed, you have a choice to pay it all up front with no interest.
But I don't remember anywhere in the information that we got that there was going to be an interest rate of 5.5.
This is standard practice. Like I say, you get a couple choices. You can pay that up front, and if you don't have that, then we assess it per year with an annual interest rate of 5.5%.
And where in the stuff that we got, was there something about that if we wanted to appeal it, that we had to bring something tonight?
Ryan?
Mayor and council members, that the letter that we mailed to people, couple things. To the first question of the interest rate, we do a feasibility study at the beginning of this project. Everybody's notified of that initial public hearing and mailing, so they have the opportunity to participate, watch, and learn that information. So we did identify that there would be an assessment, that it would be interest-bearing and paid back, but that is subject to city council approval. So we make a recommendation on that interest rate. You certainly could change that. That interest rate is based on the value of the money that the city has to borrow to bond for these projects, or that we would feasibly make investing that money ourselves. So that's identified in our assessment policy as well on the basis of that interest rate. So that's how that's determined. The second part is the letter that we just mailed to residents to let them know about this public hearing would have also had language, and I apologize, I don't have it right in front of me. Do you by chance know? That letter would talk about that 429 process and would actually have that language. It's been kind of a standard letter that we've mailed with these projects for 20
With
years.
every assessed project.
Exactly, sir.
Counselor Whiting?
You could take care of this woman with paperwork tonight if she requested to do that.
I'll provide my business card to you, and tomorrow during business hours, I'll contact you and I can provide you a copy of all that letter information. The only problem is if you want to appeal that, you would need to file a written objection tonight that reserves your right. It doesn't mean you're going that route, but it at least preserves your right to appeal the assessment if you'd like to.
Point to my question, please, Mr. Mayor. I want to make sure that if she chooses to appeal tonight, that she makes that decision.
And we'll let the city attorney here.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, yeah, it doesn't need to be anything formal. All you need to write it down on a piece of paper and say, I hereby appeal my assessment on my property, and put the address in. It doesn't need to be something you had to bring with you before coming tonight, just so you know that.
Thank you.
So I want to make sure that resident understands. So you had some questions, you were mailed a letter about this. This is public hearings, but if the second part of it, pay up front or pay it over 10 years with some interest. The other option that we were talking about, if you want to appeal this, we have to have that in writing tonight in some simple form.
And,
Counselor Whiting.
sorry, Ms. Brennan, I think was before me, but I think it has to do with the value that it has improved your property. You'd have to prove that assessment, it doesn't improve your property value as much. I'm not stating it probably as eloquently, but if
Counselor Lehman?
Just, I'm going to speak to this from my own personal experience because I'm currently paying an assessment on a road in front of my house. My improvement was $3,300 or $3,400. I opted to make it a 10-year repayment because it was easier for me, and it just gets put right onto my house payment. So my house payment went up a little bit. I think this year or next year is my last year. Because I didn't have the $3,500 up front just to give to the city, I opted to make payments over 10 years, and it was just easier for me, and it was a small amount because it was stretched out over so long. If I wanted to, or if anybody that has an assessment wanted to You know, they go down to Babes and they win that lottery, they could go up and they could pay it off at City Hall Finance Department at any time in full, and any interest for the remainder of that 10 years is gone. So there's a lot of good options out there, and I think that's a really good option that the city's taken on as a policy. And I gotta say, that policy has been the policy of the city of Shakopee for 18 years that I've sat in this chair, to charge the interest and allow it to go out to 10 years. And the reason that that's a policy is because it actually helps the homeowners that don't have a whole lot of cash laying around to just pay it up front. It allows them to make payments over a period of time, substantially reducing the burden on that property, so.
Good. This is a public hearing. If anybody else would like to come forward and make a comment on this? Before we close the public hearing, I want to make sure that if any resident that is being assessed has an opportunity to appeal this tonight before we close the public hearing.
We can check with staff, but I think current negotiations probably can be under
Well,
advisement. But
I was just trying to figure out if it was a question about the payment and the payment style up front or over time, or if it was a appeal the whole thing, right? That's kind of, we're trying to break it into two pieces, but Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, I'm gonna make a motion to close the public hearing, recognizing that the one person in attendance that indicated that they may want to appeal, I'm making this motion understanding that they have started that process and they can go ahead.
preserve that right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's fine.
And I would second that.
Everybody agree? Or, I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second by Councilor Brennan. So, well, that's fine. So they're gonna write, and that's fine. So they're gonna appeal the assessment. It is before we close the public hearing. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Just a comment, Mayor and Council, we did receive the one right to reserve to appeal that assessment, knowing that we can work with them to make sure they have all the proper information in front of them, options, et cetera, before them, so that they understand the process and all their rights in this. So we have that written objection, and I would offer that I've received only one other phone call with just some minor questions about this today. Otherwise, I have no other knowledge of any other appeals.
Very good. So, motion to close the public hearing, second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much, Councilor Lehman.
Offer resolution R 219-112, adopting assessment for the 2019 Street and Utility Reconstruction Project, CIF 19-003.
Second?
Okay, just a small technicality. Can we use the roll, the revised roll that was on the table tonight?
Yes.
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 Okay. Well, you're the motion
Let
maker.
my motion reflect that we're using the updated on the desk assessment rolls.
And that's okay with the second?
Yes.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving ahead then to item number 9, recess for EDA authority. I would take a motion to stand in recess. Councilor Contreras?
Motion to recess for E EDA.
And a second from Councilor Whiting. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the motion passes. We will stand in recess. Mr. President.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the November 6th, 2019 meeting of the Shakopee Economic Development Authority. Please make note of the roll. Looks like we are going for the record tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Lehman.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
A motion and a second on the floor to approve the agenda. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is passed. Mr. Lehman,
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda has passed. Mr. Mars,
Mr. President, I gotta get in here. I'd like to offer a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, December 3rd, 2019 at 7 PM.
we have a motion on the floor. There's a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed a record of the EDA. Thank you very much.
We stand reconvened for this November 6, 2019 City Council meeting of the City of Shakopee. Congratulations to the president of the EDA. Phenomenal job on the last
Thank you,
meeting.
thank you.
Our meeting. Moving ahead then to 11A1, which is a wellhead protection ordinance. Michael.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So, as the mayor said, this is a wellhead protection ordinance. Currently, the city does not have one. We became aware that a couple of businesses were drilling their own wells into our aquifer, and most cities in the region have this in place already. This is actually based off the Minnesota League of Cities model ordinance. So, working with the city attorney, we got this drafted up. This is basically to protect the city's aquifer and our wells.
Questions of staff, Councilor Whiting?
For many years, we've talked about I&I, and you know, government likes the acronyms, and that's I&I is infiltration, and I don't even know what it is. Inflow, and yeah. So it's water getting
Infiltration,
back,
yes.
you know, rainwater and such getting back into the aquifer, and that would be through wells, isn't it? Isn't that correct, or could be?
Typically, mayor and council know that I&I comes from through the fines of dirt, other areas, goes down into the cracks and fissures in the bedrock and gets down into the aquifer. So,
But my point is, typically we don't allow wells because, for one thing, this is
so mayor and council, I think the issue with private wells is they have the opportunity to basically get things we don't want in our water table into the water table. So solvents, other chemicals, whatever could happen, contaminated water and gets into the aquifer.
Councilor Lehman?
A couple of points here. I&I is typically referred to as inflow of storm water, runoff water entering into your closed sanitary sewer system, which we pay the Met Council to treat, and we don't want to pay them to treat rainwater because it costs a lot of money. As far as wells, the Shakopee Public Utilities Commission is supportive of this policy. And another side that's not discussed about private wells is you don't know, hypothetically, you could have a couple of private wells utilizing a lot of water and could draw down your aquifer and put in jeopardy the availability of water to the rest of your community.
Which has actually occurred in other communities in the metro area. Right.
So that's another side of the equation that is not monitored, where when you're on the system, your usage is monitored. And it's much easier to plan your long-term usages and current usages by that monitoring. You know, if you've got one big user that's allowed to use an astronomical amount, you probably aren't going to put a whole line of that type of user in the same vicinity of that aquifer or maybe even the same aquifer. So from a water management standpoint, policy makes sense.
More questions of staff? Questions of staff? Councilor Whiting?
But currently, there's many areas of the city that are on private wells and things, and because city water service can't.
So Mayor and Council, if you're not within 1,000 feet and you want to drill a new well, you could do that under this. And also, if you remember, we have an agreement in Jackson Township that even if we annex in property and we run water actually in front of that property, they don't have to connect until their well or septic system fails. But this is to prohibit. So some of you have seen there's been a lot of news. Companies have been coming into towns and basically drilling into the aquifer with permits from the state and basically hauling that water off or bottling it or whatever. This would prohibit that. So they'd have to get their water through the public utility.
Other questions of staff?
Well, a lot of the outlying areas that do have private wells, I'll say townships outside of city jurisdiction, when they do put in a well, they're not within 1,000 feet of service, but they are going through Scott County water controls, and they're screening out who the company is that's actually putting in the well, checking their references. There's certain design standards that it has to have in casings and stuff like this, where somebody pounding a sand point into the ground is following none of that. Then you have the not knowing where wells might be situation, which we've all heard on the news, where some young kid falls down a well hundreds of feet down, and it takes them weeks to get them out of the ground, so.
If there's no more questions of staff, thank you. Councilors? Councilor Brennan?
I make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2019-13, adding section 103-21 to the city code prohibiting private wells on properties where city water services are available within 1,000 feet.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Contreras. Discussion? Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, one of the discussion points that at the utility that came up on this item, which we've all seen, well, maybe not this council, but past council have seen, I think it's fair to say that the city and the utility will probably both have unique properties that are going to take unique solutions. We've seen it specifically in the city with sewer service, and there's just going to be that one-off here and there unique circumstance situations, and we'll just have to work through them.
My comments are couple-fold. First of all, a couple years ago, 5, 6 years ago, maybe 7 now, that the city had a list of folks that weren't connected to sewer, and then the utility had a list of people that weren't connected to water, and there was going to be efforts to enforce that over time so that they all come in with the system, because sewer and water, obviously in a municipality of 42,000, is vital, real important, because of the problems occur with failure, both of a well or a septic system. So I guess I was very surprised that the utility didn't have ordinance like this, or ask the city to do this, to have recent businesses allowed to do wells. I think the utility would want to get a new customer, right? Or big or small. I get to pump and sell some water. But I think globally, the big picture is the protection of our groundwater. We saw an article, yes, a company that wanted to pull out 500 gazillion gallons out of water in southwest Minnesota and ship it off, and I was kind of appalled when I read the article, and then I applaud the DNR right away. A couple days later, immediately put the kibosh on that. But I think water's a precious resource, and how groundwater infiltrates into the ground to rebuild our aquifers, and keeping that as best as possible is real important. So you start with the water on top of the ground. We should have municipal water for our businesses to help do that. So congratulate the city for bringing this forward. Again, I do wish the utility would have brought it for the city to do this, but at the end, we're getting it. It matches up with our comp plan and what's in the best interest of our community. Did you have more? Motion on the table in a second. Discussion, discussion, discussion. All in favor, say aye. 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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving ahead then to 12A is the city bill list for our review. And if no questions on that, we would move to 12B, our liaison and administration report. Councilor Brennan.
I attended the city cleanup event that was held a few weeks ago. And I recognize or thank the city staff for organizing the first fall cleanup day. And thank you for inviting me and the council to work alongside of you. Councilor Contreras and I had the opportunity to work as a team to talk to a lot of community members that came to drop off items to recycle and trash. Even though it was really a wet day, it was a good day. I want to also attended the Senate Capital Investment Tour. And thank you, Senator Pratt, for hosting that tour and bringing members of the committee to Shakopee to hear about the Minnesota River Stabilization Project and the 169 pedestrian bridge and bicycle bridge over 169. Michael Kursky and Steve Lillyhog and staff did a great job at presenting those projects to the Senate. I also attended the Scott County Unified Transit Committee, and we continue to work on transit plans for Scott County. Angelica and I celebrated Bioenergy Day at Coda Energy, and we toured Coda Energy and Raw Martin. And that was, Coda Energy really talked about the efforts that they put in to minimize events like fire and that type of event. And I've never toured Raw Martin, so that was good information. I volunteered at Spooky Night at Community Center. Congratulations to the staff for hosting an excellent event. The more I have the opportunity to volunteer at the community events, the more I understand the value of community programming for all of our 42,000 members of our community. I attended the Together We Can forum that was organized by the Scott County Advisory Committee to End Child Abuse and Neglect. And I was with Angelica, and she did a great job speaking to the group. So I'll let her fill in more information about that. I also went to the Scout Executive Committee meeting and met with members of the State House and Senate to talk about legislative priorities that Scale's bringing forward. Administrator Reynolds sent all that information out to everybody. So if you have any comments, please get them back to Mr. Reynolds, and I'll bring them back to the Executive Committee. That's
Wow.
it.
Counselor Brennan, a lot of breath there. Thank you. Counselor Lehman.
The utility Windermere South Second Edition water is done. The booster station landscaping is going to be carried over until after winter.
Buck, are you speaking now?
Yes.
Okay.
The Shakopee Public Utilities. The booster station, they were going to try to get the landscaping in this year, but it looks like winter fell upon us, so that's going to go over to next year. And yes, erosion control is on the list, although it's fairly flat, so it should be a whole lot of runoff. A couple of outages. One was 30 minutes, 8 customers. It was a squirrel.
Squirrel?
Yeah. The 30th, we had 2 customers, 20 minutes, equipment failure. Underground coupler of some sort came apart, and they suspect lightning actually follows it underground, and it doesn't have an arrestor, so they're going to start looking at putting arresters in underground terminated ends. New concept there. Last one was another contractor dug up some lines, so that was one person, 34 minutes, probably the one that they hired or something. Doggy Doo's electricity is done. In the old City Hall site downtown, they're going to have some outages down there. They have to move a bunch of stuff, and it's going to affect some of the businesses. They're working on a timeline to try to figure out when it's best to do that, and apparently some of this stuff is going to go into the new alley that they're putting in, and so the length of my... Well, I did bring up the technical difficulty on their taping for their rebroadcast at the last, one of their last meetings, and they had the same problem at the last meeting, but at the very beginning of the meeting, they double-checked it, caught it. Apparently, they used 2 different systems. I'm not really up to how that works, but they're aware of it, and they're going to make fixes.
Counselor Roman?
I tried to watch their video yesterday, I believe, for this last meeting, and it's not up. So do you have any idea on how quickly they try to get those videos
I
on?
don't.
'Cause it's been...
I can find out, though.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I refer to it often, so.
It'd be nice if they could just go live.
Right, right.
I know they're working on an update on their website, along with their billing and they're integrating the two together. It would really be nice if they would integrate the technology and the
Right.
viewing and stuff. The school board had the same problem for years when they were down at the old central school, where it was really hard to hear what they're talking about. Sometimes rebroadcasting was, you could see them, but you couldn't hear nothing. So I think all government entities and public entities need to be open and accessible and heard and viewed, and
I think a little frustration.
except for Congress, they just frustrate us.
Oh, closed door. All right, but yeah, it'd be great if they could be live. Thank you very much. I, on October 19th, too, attended the first annual City Fall Cleanup Day, and most of the council members were there participating. Great to see the residents come and tidy up their home and their yards, and those programs. I know the spring is so popular. I think we had over 350 cars on our the fall one. It's I'm glad we're doing the fall one. I hope we continue. Those things are very, you could tell folks to throw stuff away all the time and give them that opportunity for the recycling aspect. We have great partners that separate that, and want to thank Public Works for their efforts. So that's all I have for my, and I'm sure that the city won a couple of awards, and I'll just refer to Mr. Reynolds when he talks about that, but tip my hat to this leadership, this staff at our city. The work they're doing is phenomenal. Councilor Whiting.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also attended the cleanup day. Great to see all those folks out there. So I had control of the cars of which lane they got to go in, so we couldn't have worked out without me, but just wanted to point that out. So that was great, and great to see it. I'm kind of curious to see if spring cleanup days numbers are down because of fall cleanup day, but we'll see. Had MVTA last week, and we got our checks from the state appropriation for the Route 495 that services Shakopee. So that's a nice little boost to help pay for some of those routes. And when you guys are out and about, when you're talking to people about transit in our opt-out situation is not always have a guaranteed funding source. It goes from year to year on whether or not they get their little chit of money, and there's always this scrambling back and forth for these budget monies, and trying to get a consistent funding source for transit, and especially our transit, is critical, and we need to finally get over that fighting for the money every year. So we had a ridership report, and ridership was down a little bit, 2.7% off of last year. State Fair ridership was up, so it was a good year for the State Fair.
They use it on the
riding bus.
events.
Yeah, so it's there and people are using it. So constantly tinkering with the routes and things like that. One part of that is the downtown routes. They moved their location off of Marquette and actually improved times significantly. So just a few tinkerings like that can really change how people feel about, 15 more minutes on the bus kind of thing. So great work there. And we also had a report from the Met Council. Our Met Council representatives were at the meeting, so that was nice to work together. Also met with the interview committee. We presented our candidate. Great to see a lot of participation in the community. Would have liked to seen more, but what do you do? It happens.
Yeah, well, I'll be coming up here in January, February, knocking on the door again, so please step forward and serve your community. Is that it?
Can I
Thank you.
ask a question?
Councilor Brennan?
Route 498, I think, is the right number that goes up to the Golden Triangle. Was there
I'm not sure of the number, but yeah.
Was there any information on that and how it's doing and if it's being used?
I'd have to check on the numbers, but you're right. That usually didn't cross over into that area, but now
Yeah,
it's
it's
going
like
to.
the new route. It's a new route that was just established.
Check on that.
Councilor Contreras?
Well, most of you have already commented about the fall cleanup day, but I just, we did have a great turnout, and I just wanted to say thank you to Public Works and everybody else who worked. It was just amazing to see how fast that line was going. So they were working pretty fast once they got to that
I
gate.
think it was the cashiers up front,
Was it?
right?
Jody and I? Okay. All right. And then on the 22nd, I attended the Scott County Census Count group, where we are continuing just to educate the community of the importance of being counted. Scott County does lose about 1,500 per person within a year for every person that is not counted, and that is money, that we need that is needed for other services. So for every person that's not counted, that's money that just doesn't come to Scott County. Coda Energy 2, the other one was Together We Can, where we did address the importance of creating a community that works for all its members and begin to consider the relationship and strategies that support, and that is to end child abuse and neglect. And I had the opportunity to speak, and it was just about what I do, what I work at, and the things I do too, and how I encounter with kids, and just working with my own, right? So that was a privilege to talk there. And the last one on Saturday, SDA did put on a resource day for Latinos. Also a great turnout. They did have free health services, flu shots, blood pressure checks, and sugar level checks for the uninsured and the ones who just don't have insurance, access to insurance. And that is it. Thank you.
Counselor Contreras, thank you very much for that update. Mr. Reynolds, your administration report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It's always good to be able to talk about the success of the city. As the mayor alluded to a little bit earlier, the Local Government Innovation Awards were recently announced. And those awards recognize projects in 5 different categories: cities, counties, schools, townships, and Native American nations. They're presented by the Humphrey School of Public Affairs at the University of Minnesota, which is an esteemed graduate school when it comes to public affairs in the United States. And I'm delighted to say that the city of Shakopee was part of 2 of the 4 innovation awards that were presented, which no other community in the state did. We did. And it's pretty exciting across the board. The first one was the city, in conjunction with the SMSC, were recognized in the City and Native Nations categories for the collaborative work on the Shakopee Cultural Corridor. And then the city was also recognized in the city category in its collaborative development of automating the election judge hiring and training process. Both Mr. Kursky and our fine city clerk were parts of those efforts. Congratulations. Lori, thank you very much. From your work on the automation of the election judge process, and Michael, you and your staff with working with the SMC, and actually not just the SMSC, but working with Scott County, the SMSC, Three Rivers Park District, the DNR, and also hopefully in collaboration with the Scott County Historical Society as we move things forward there as well. So it's pretty amazing when you think about it. We were part of 50% of the awards and innovation that were given to cities in the state of Minnesota. Congratulations, City of Shakopee.
Thank you. I saw those announcements, and just Shakopee's won a couple awards here, especially over the last couple of years, and to see our city be recognized, our leadership team, our staff, all around in many different areas. I've never seen a period where Shakopee has won so many awards in a short period of time, but innovative, collaborative, different partners, pretty well-rounded situation, and a lot to be proud of. So thank you to our wonderful achieving staff. We're very much appreciated, and it's all for the benefit of our community, and that's what's important.
Great job.
Item number 13, other business. Do we have other business in front of this council? Seeing none?
I make a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, November 19th, 2019 at 7 o'clock.
Second.
I have a motion, a second to adjourn to November 19th. Discussion, discussion, discussion. All in favor, say aye. 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 Those opposed, motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:45.
46.